Rock concert movement number 1. The basic head bob. Ready, go.
I need a picture. Hey, there I am. Really loud. All right, Bradshaw with you here. Wednesday afternoon in the capital city. Thanks for coming along. Straight up 1:30. What can I do for you today? Email me, radiobradshaw@gmail.com. Call. All are welcome. Some are even capable. 244-0077. And follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Radio Bradshaw. We have the president's plan. 23 herbs, spices, and proposals, some executive orders. Some are, promises of action, which are pretty, I think, middle of the road. I think the bigger story is just the absolute right-wing meltdown we are seeing today.
I finally saw one of those truthers for Sandy Hook, finally. It hit my Facebook. They got a picture of somebody from the shooting in Aurora being the lawyer for that kid, and then being in the Sandy Hook parental.
I love the fact, and this is...
it doesn't even look like the same person.
The conspiracy theory brain is that, this, massive governmental conspiracy organization, Cobra, the Illuminati, whatever, Section 31, is both so omnipotent and powerful that they will stage these acts, yet is so incompetent as to place the same people in both scenarios. I can't put myself in the conspiracy.
Well, and the report went on to say that this person was hired for crisis acting.
That term popped up by a man by the name of Gene Rosen, who we'll talk about later, who is having his life turned upside down by these a-holes.
Is that the Jewish guy that took in the 6 kids?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they are. I mean, this is.
Though.
While I don't necessarily go out and support, take away everyone's gun.
Yeah.
Would you be with me? Like, we should go through this man's email and caller ID and pull those people's guns.
Yeah, I don't think once you make threats, I think you lose your right. So that wouldn't bother me. The problem I have is perhaps this guy shouldn't have given quite so many interviews. Like, this is the most interviewed person in the wake of Sandy Hook.
Because he'd set crazy people off?
I think we should be more aware that happens. I mean, I kind of know what's going to happen, when you do that. But
this is the point, is this reaction. The old saying, if the law is on your side, hammer the law.
Yeah.
If the facts are on your side, pound the facts. And
Sure.
if you don't have the law or the facts, pound on the table. And what we're seeing now
even this guy, though, says he perhaps opened himself up to it by doing so many interviews.
Well, again, he's not responsible for other people's bad behavior.
That's why. On one hand, I think he should have refrained so much. On the other hand, I definitely think the people
because it's not just conspiracy,
especially directly threatening this guy.
It's not just conspiracy moonbats calling up this guy. Now we have the NRA bringing the president's children into this.
How?
We'll talk about that.
You get me all excited, and then we end up talking to Frank for an hour, and I don't ever get to hear anything.
There won't be any of that, Frank.
He's calling right now. I'm just kidding.
First thing, I just want to get this out of the way, is yesterday the House of Representatives held a vote on Hurricane Sandy relief. All right, this was originally Republicans punted on this because they had more important things to do, like try to ban Obamacare again. With the new Congress seated and in session, yesterday was the House vote on Hurricane Sandy relief, and 2 of the no votes caught my eye, and that is Tom Latham and Steve King, the 2 Republican House members from Iowa. And maybe I'm just old that I remember the floods of 93, 2008. I remember, not hurricanes, but tornadoes hitting Parkersburg. I'm so old, I remember the drought from this summer and the requests, for disaster assistance. And to see to Iowa, and we are a state whose livelihood is dependent upon our weather, and we are particularly susceptible as an ag state. Our cities flood. Our farmland, suffers from the drought. We are in Tornado Alley. To see two Republicans, again, pander to, in this case, the Club for Growth or the Koch brothers, two groups that have been very outspoken against Sandy Aid. I mean, is the epitome of FYIGM. Bleep you, I got mine. I got my farm, ag insurance bills passed. I got my disaster relief. Right? When my cities flood, when my University of Iowa floods, I got the money there. When you want it, bleep you. Just and again, I don't know whether to blame, creatures of their environment like King or Latham or, the Christocolas and Koch brothers of the world who are pushing this. I mean, I don't say this all. They're bad people. Again, when someone joins, say, the Chamber of Commerce, a large corporation, to help, maintain tax subsidies for offshoring. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. When I see, a Ferrari driving down the interstate with a Mitt Romney sticker. Again, while I disagree, I understand it. It's the guy driving, the beat-up Ford Fiesta with the Romney sticker, and I go, I don't know if you know exactly what you're dealing with here.
How many Ferraris have you seen with a Mitt sticker?
Oh, no, those people don't put.
Because I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to stick a stupid sticker on my Ferrari.
But some of the ginormous SUVs and stuff live at West Side. There's still SUVs driving around with W stickers.
Yeah,
but I get that. I don't agree with it, but I understand. If you're making enough money. But
now the SUVs are pretty cheap because nobody wants to buy those gas guzzling hogs.
No, Escalades are still.
You can get like an '05 Escalade for under 10 now.
Oh, well, I'm talking like the new stuff.
That looks new.
Still has the new car.
Well, if you want like
smell.
a brand new one, yeah, you're still talking up there, but they'll always be up there. But
I have seen plenty of high-end Mercedes and the like driving around with Mitt stickers. And I get it. I disagree with it, but I get it.
Why would they ruin the paint on there? I wouldn't even put the stupid magnet. Did you find your magnet, by the way?
That was you? I finally thought some wingnut had pulled it off.
Nope, that was me.
In the same way that putting one of those Darwin fish on the back of your car is almost a guarantee that some follower of Jesus will key you, because it's what Jesus would do. I figured someone had finally gotten my original, Obama-Biden magnet from early. I mean, this was right after they had named Biden VP, and it's been on my car ever since. Hey, I'm a Cub fan. When I pick a winner, I got to stick with it, man. But to see Latham and King pander to bad people, I don't know exactly what that makes them. But in a state that is so dependent on, farm bills, crop insurance, that is very susceptible to weather. Minor changes cause big problems. To see King and Latham vote against Sandy Aid. And looking through, in, say, Louisiana, Florida, New York, areas where disaster, relief is or has been key. There were Republicans who voted for it. Eric Cantor, Kevin McCarthy, two right-wingers voted for it. So it wasn't like there wasn't political cover. I mean, this was a choice by Aaron Latham, who I'm sure, in the spirit of being, morally consistent, will, of course, high five any Representative Dow who votes to do away with, subsidies, tries to do away with any aid for the Midwest and Iowa in particular, because if it's okay to, scuttle it or try to scuttle it, that they failed from New York and New Jersey. That's the bigger thing. Like they knew the bill was going to pass. Why intentionally be on the wrong side of history? And whoever ends up lining up against these two in 2014, if this isn't part of the campaign against them, then we don't deserve to win. All right. The president's plan to reduce gun violence unveiled this morning. As soon as he was done, by the way, I decided to spend 20 minutes listening to Alex Jones. He's the man who, again, with him, I don't think it's an act. I think he's legitimately that touched in the head. What got me was the content was all, inane. Impeachment, tyranny, 1776. What got me, it takes a lot of commercial breaks. And literally, it's one thing, listen to AM talk radio, and you hear a lot of ads for, sketchy health products and survival seed banks and male enhancement. They're scattered in with the, the Lowe's ads and the local stuff. With Alex Jones, every single ad, there are multiple, survival seed companies, all vying for your business. It's all gold, colloidal silver. It's Doomsday Preppers Shopping Edition. And that is every single ad on that show. I mean, that's his audience. But listening to the right-wing freakout, I think, is far more important than what the president is actually putting forward. But most of this stuff is pretty straight forward. Require criminal background checks for all gun sales. Again, seems pretty straightforward. And by the way, has very widespread support, even among NRA members. And so private gun sales, gun show sales, all have to go through a background check. And I would assume, and again, devil's always in the details, incredibly over-the-top punishments for those who try to sidestep those laws.
Well, and most gun laws have incredibly over-the-top punishment, so I think that'd be
as
part
well.
of the
They should. I mean, the president specifically
not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, the president specifically said, to paraphrase Uncle Ben, this power comes with responsibility.
Okay, now here's a question I have though, because we've never required that. The ATF, the federal government, really has no idea where guns go after they leave the original owner. We've allowed those sales to continue for a long time. What's to keep people from being like, oh, I sold that right after I bought it? Or, how are we going to accurately track guns that were bought before this date? Are we just going to grandfather them all in? And then how does that help this generation? I mean, I know 30 years from now.
Well, that's some of this is the point. Some of it is, look, we're not going to close Pandora's box.
So as long as you understand that, like, some of this is going to take years to really have an effect. Okay.
Yeah, because it took years to get to this point.
Sure. I just want to.
You're not gonna change everything overnight, and this is where I think you're going to see the NRA be particularly ghouly.
Sure.
Which they're going to, the first time someone is shot after these are, see, it didn't save everyone.
Yeah, well, and you'll always have that because you want people forcing their side of you. And I'm trying to look from it in a middle perspective here. I know your listeners think I'm the stupid gun guy, but I'm pretty reasonable when it comes to this stuff. I would like to think.
Most of the time. You have some out there ideas. We'll just leave it at that.
Out there ideas about guns? Like what?
Oh,
I've never wanted anybody to own rocket launchers or hand grenades.
So you believe in gun restrictions?
I believe they're already there. How about that?
Janelle emails. Oh, yes, he is the stupid gun guy. He's right. See? It took 30 seconds.
I'm glad that people think I'm the stupid gun guy. I mean, it's just funny to me. I don't own a bunch of guns. I don't.
Yeah, you do.
I own 3.
That's a bunch.
I own a musket, a shotgun, and a 1978 revolver. That's not by anybody's collections. They would look at my collection and go, okay, 2 of these are decorative.
No, they would probably just assume you have a penis of average girth and length.
Yeah, they would look at 2 of them and go, those are collector's items. And one of them, the musket that I use, they'd go, I didn't know they made black powder guns that looked that modern. Weird.
I mean, so background checks for all gun sales. You're cool with that?
Yeah, I think that.
Right.
I think it's a great idea.
And by the way, most gun owners are, and the NRA is not.
Yeah, I think it's an all right idea. The private sales thing's always kind of bothered me because how do we know somebody's being honest or showing, like, we can't verify all the stuff. Yeah. And the thing that scares me about private gun sales and why I've never sold a gun to anybody I didn't personally know for a long time is what happens if you have stuff from 6 months ago before you got investigated or committed a crime or whatever, and you still have that legitimate paperwork.
Well, and by the way, gun owners who sell guns privately should be okay with this, you know. As anyone who's ever worked in an office environment, what is the one thing that will always save your ass? And that is a paper trail.
Sure.
So if that gun is misused and the cops come knocking on your door,
yeah,
the absolute defense would be, hey, here's the paperwork.
What I would like to see, though,
I sold it, not mine.
Yeah.
By the way, I sold it to Ted Nugent. You might want to stop at his house.
If we're gonna track gun sales somehow, I want the responsibility lifted off the individual owner, so there's not a lack of, because what I would hate is to do all this stuff and have people that sold guns that just don't know. Like, guns have to be transferred a certain way, and there's a certain paper trail required, and not the records kept at the individual.
And that's something that the gun lobby has fought.
Well,
for years.
The problem is because we don't want. They don't, and I think rightfully so, want all that information necessarily compiled by the government.
Because they're afraid of some sort of, gun grab where Acorn workers.
Every time guns have been grabbed, the first part
gay Acorn workers are going to come to your house and demand your gun.
I don't think gun owners are typically afraid of gay people.
No, but that's the kind of wild-eyed, slippery slope where,
I understand, but you do understand.
Gay, socialist, Marxist, black Acorn workers are going to come to your house.
There's a lot of black gun owners.
And demand your guns.
The stuff you get away with saying just because you're a liberal, I just think it's ridiculous.
I'm talking about the paranoia of not all gun. Understand, I'm making a very clear distinction here between gun owners and gun people.
Yeah.
And gun people are a very specific subset where everything, like the answer to every solution is guns.
Yeah, and those people bother me.
Up to and including, what's the gun violence? The solution is guns. And I have a theory on this.
Go ahead.
The folks at the Washington Post, ABC News, did a poll through Pew. And they were asking about an assault weapons ban, which is kind of a nebulous subject that means different things to different people. But just overall, all right, specifics be damned. American support an assault weapons ban. Sorry, Bushmaster. 58-39. That's big support. I mean, that's obviously not all liberals, Democrats. That is widespread support. Every demographic except one is on board, and that is white non-college men. That is the only group that is not supportive of an assault weapons ban. And the thing that immediately pops into my head is this is a source of empowerment for them in a world that is quickly leaving them behind.
Well, I think that's true. I think that's true on some level.
Only quasi-derisively I'll use the term, they cling to their guns, I think, because it's the only source of empowerment.
I think there's some truth to that.
These, people have, and I don't want to get off on too big of a tangent, but it reminds me of the obsessive video game people.
Your show is just a giant tangent. I don't know
That's
if
true.
you can go too big.
But not in the video games caused Columbine sense, but considering that video games are a bigger industry than Hollywood now, I think there's definitely something to be learned from that industry, and the trend you see is, progression and achievements and building up, your player character. Maybe this is just because I watched the Penny
Video
gets
games
addicted
are
to
you playing?
Penny gets addicted to video games episode of Big Bang Theory.
Never watched that show.
It's pretty much a nerd minstrel show.
Yeah.
But anyway, neither here nor there.
I like How You Met Your Mother, but that's about
Oh
it.
God, that show has completely jumped the shark.
Has it? I haven't seen it in a
jumped
while.
the shark. It did handsprings over the shark. It rode a jet ski over. It's bad.
I've only watched like back episodes. I never watched like
Yeah,
current
the
ones.
last 2 seasons.
Oh yeah, I haven't watched that far into it.
Terrible. Have you ever heard the term poop soccer?
No.
I'm not making this up. There are people who will spend so many hours, like continuously at a video game. Well, you can figure out where poop soccer comes from. And this isn't just, the people who let their kids die because they're playing online games, but it is that sense of reward and progression. And I get, my +2 dagger of bunny slang or whatever.
Sure.
And for a lot of people, I mean, World of Warcraft ended up with 10 million hardcore users by accident. It is it is the fast food version of empowerment. It's quick, it's easy, it's pretty much guaranteed if you put in
Sure.
the time.
Well, a lot of
you're
the internet's
Leroy.
that way. Look at mysecondlife.com and all these places that allow the internet.
Well, Second Life is fantasy fulfillment because not many people are born with cat ears and the ability to fly, and it's actually a place for erotic role playing furry weirdos.
I've never been there, so I guess I don't know much about it. But I'm saying there's a lot of the things available online allow people to do that. I mean, we know that the average gamer is not the person that makes it. But the average super hardcore game isn't necessarily the person that makes it in society.
Well, yeah, and that's the point. Is they kind of bypass the normal, routes for personal fulfillment and sidestep with these video games. And I think in this case, you see the gun clingers, and it is the same thing. I go back, to the gang member.
Well, that's
say, why do you defend this block? I mean, to the outsiders, it sounds so absurd that, literally you are willing to kill an outsider just for walking down your sidewalk.
I think you're right
and
there.
They ask, why? And they say, because it's the only thing I got.
I think you're right that there are, having been to gun shows and looked around, there are certain members of that culture that are they're way too into it. I mean, their whole life is...
It is the only thing that gives them a sense of ability.
There's that people, but that's true of about anything. I mean, like we just said, there's those guys in video games, there's those guys there. There's those guys at the office, that spend their whole life at the office.
No one, yeah.
I mean... And
that's a socially acceptable
way
of getting fulfillment.
It's a little bit more socially acceptable, but when you look at
it's very. I mean,
it's very acceptable, but when you look at the repercussions, they're the same. You end up broken and alone by yourself, being a little nutty. So I mean that stuff happens, but the average gun owner aren't those people. The average gun owner doesn't belong to the NRA.
Gun owner. I'm talking about gun people.
And some of those guys that are kind of nutty, gun show, we have a booth at the gun show with 80 million guns on it, and we don't even know how we got there. Those people, I'm okay with a little extra background check. Maybe I want to know what they're doing.
Well, and I think there's certainly a lot of room for behavior, which is why I'm far more interested, again, in the right-wing freakout, which is still, it's
fermenting. Going across my Facebook right now.
Yeah, it's still fermenting. We haven't reached peak wingnut.
No, a lot of people are kind of confused at what the president said.
You're going to get it here in about 12 to 18 hours when the typical right-wing nut job is told exactly what to be angry about.
We got to wait for Glenn Beck to really respond here.
That's generally how these things work. It takes about half a news cycle, and then you will see them all kind of start to march lockstep when they are told exactly what and how, to be.
Yeah, once Glenn Beck exegetes this, it'll go nuts. I agree with you there. To me, I read a lot of it. A lot of it kind of made sense. I think it is time to have a conversation about how we prevent mentally ill people from acquiring weapons of any sort or putting themselves in positions to do any damage.
That was the next bit. Take 4 executive actions to ensure information on dangerous individuals is available to the background check system. And this is, information sharing. So say a neuroscience PhD candidate, in Colorado is removed from school from being, not so dangerous. That should be available when that guy goes to Walmart or online to go buy a gun.
Now, let me ask you a question, though. What happens with, that guy's pretty smart, whatever his name is, the Gotham City, whatever.
Jared Loughner.
Yeah. Clearly.
I
can't remember his name.
What is his name?
Anyway, the Batman shooter.
Loughner's the Arizona guy, yeah.
The Batman shooter. Okay, that guy clearly, at some point in his life, was pretty smart, right? He's a PhD candidate. And
I think he is pretty smart.
Yeah, he probably is.
I don't think he ever became.
Well,
smart.
he's really been pulling this dumb routine in court, so I'm just kind of glossing over that, I guess. But what happens when that guy realizes that he needs to be careful and acquire this stuff prior to going to treatment? I think what will happen, and this is a negative effect here, and we need to figure out how to stop it, is I like the idea of this. What I want is to make sure that people aren't afraid to go to their psychiatry.
Well, that's also covered here, and this is the kind of, you want to avoid the feedback loop. And part of it is mental health parity. And what that means, no, we're not making fun of people with mental health, but how many of you have opened up a benefits book? You get your Blue Cross Blue Shield, 2013 enrollment, and you look at it, and it's got the usual, co-pays and all that fun stuff, and but there'll be a specific section on mental health that'll say something, depending on your plan, we'll cover up to 3, mental health visits a year. And that would be something absurd, pretty much any other discipline. There wouldn't be, you're allowed a maximum of 3, general practitioner visits. Or you can only go to your, ear, nose, and throat guy 2 times maximum in a year. And this was a way that health insurance companies looked to shed cost by sectioning off mental health care and making it different than health care. And what mental health parity is you treat a psychologist, psychiatrist, the same as any other medical profession, except for chiropractors. Most of those people are insane. But as far as legitimate medical doctors, there's no difference, all right, between a general practitioner and psychiatric help.
Well,
and that's the way it should be.
I think you're right there.
The stigma, and to provide access. And
the question I have is how do we deem somebody not able to? And where's that gray? Because you always got a gray area, and where are we going to set the gray area at? Because that's the scary place to me, is the guy that's almost crazy enough not to. How do you determine that?
And it's hard to there is no exact line between.
The problem is I don't
make generalized threats on Facebook, and this is something that happens all the time.
Yeah,
and we'll actually do it. And I think in this case, you err on the side of, if you're not smart enough. All right, if you have poor enough impulse control, all right, that you will tell someone, I'm going to shoot up the school, I'm going to blow up the building, I'm going to set so-and-so on fire.
Yeah, you can't say bomb an airplane. I get the thought process.
But I think we err on the side. One example.
I agree with you there, except that some mental issues, you're going to have people that successfully come out of those, And how do we determine that they've successfully come out of it? Because one thing I don't want to do
But
with anybody's rights
at that
is
point,
unnecessarily take them away.
But at that point, if you've gotten to the point where you've drawn that sort of attention, I think there should be.
So you're for a lifetime ban?
If you get yourself into the hole, you need to get yourself out of it. Let me just give you a real life example.
Okay, do it.
A couple years ago, I had a guy write me a email in the middle of the night. And I believe the exact word, there was other stuff in it, but the exact wording is, "Your blasphemy will be dealt with."
Okay.
And in that section of the email, he wasn't talking about, how God will judge me. He was talking about himself.
Okay.
Law enforcement got involved at that point.
Naturally.
With the threat. And local police took care of it. His local county was out of town. Sheriff's department went and interviewed the guy, and they deemed him not an immediate threat. He was a big talker. But should that be on, in the dossier when that guy goes to apply for a gun?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, he was threatening enough that it wasn't just me who felt threatened, but law enforcement acted on it.
There is something to be said, but if law enforcement said, "Hey, look, this guy isn't really a threat," then I go with law enforcement's opinion.
Okay, so that guy the next day should be able to go and buy a half dozen guns at Walmart.
And see, that's the catch-22. What do we do? Is this guy crazy enough to deny him his rights, or is he not? You're alive, so for whatever reason he wasn't, and so I think law enforcement made the right decision. But in hindsight, if you were dead the next day...
What's to say the very next show didn't completely set him off the deep end?
I agree. Let's say the next day he came and blew your head off, right? And he acquired a gun in the meantime. Man, you'd have to look at that really hard. The problem is...
hold on. That guy's words affected me. I mean, I was not allowed by my... corporate got involved at that point. I was not allowed to leave or enter the building by myself.
Sure. Good idea. So somebody gets killed with you.
I had to be escorted. Yeah. I wasn't allowed. And I was the guy, when stuff would break in the middle of the night, I'd be the one to drive in.
Sure.
In fact, I was not allowed.
You're me.
Yeah, I was not allowed to do that for a couple of weeks. I mean, this man had a direct effect on my life. And you're saying that there shouldn't be a cost for that?
Well, I think there's a certain kind of psycho that writes anybody and makes even vague threats.
I mean, generally, the guy who's going to do it isn't going to warn you ahead of time. But
I would have to see the letter. I mean, somebody saying your blasphemy is going to get dealt with. Maybe they're a disconnected writer and they didn't mean anything about themselves. Because I know some people have ADD when they write, they jump all over and it's just horrible to read.
Yeah, people write horrible things to me all the time. Most of it was just, worth a chuckle or two, and the really good ones would get passed around.
I definitely think he should have been interviewed and asked, what do you mean by this? Because if he means, God's going to deal with you in the end, well, you've kind of signed up for that. You're aware that we believe in these gods,
you're not worried
about that.
By the way, I got that kind of stuff every day.
Sure. I'll tell you that. I think God's going to deal with you in the end. But I'm not personally ever going to attack you.
I think she'll be fine with it.
We hug it out
if she's there. But anyway, neither.
But see, you do incite these people to riots.
I don't.
You just tried to piss me off. What are you talking about?
But I in no way, shape, or form tried to antagonize you. I'm not telling you fighting words. I'm not calling you at home.
Oh, I would say to some people, calling God a woman's fighting words. I mean, to some people, I'm not saying that's.
I think
the person's a little too worried about protecting a God that is supposed to be able to protect themselves.
I think that guy has deeper issues.
Probably. Like I said, I didn't see anything I was really worried about. A lot of it I was like, well, that's really vague. I mean, that's my idea or my thought process when I read through these is like, okay, what does that even mean? Okay,
Well, let's go through the rest of the list.
Go through the list, yeah.
Because we got a lot. We've made it through 2.
Yeah.
In 40 minutes.
We're good.
Reinstate and strengthen the assault weapons ban. Again, that's all about what details. The original assault weapons ban, which, by the way, Ronald Reagan personally lobbied for. Just, the gun debate has changed, and as the right wing has become more extreme, the debate has.
I didn't see that one. I missed that one.
My favorite It's 1999. Wayne LaPierre, head of the NRA, saying, "We believe in absolutely gun-free, zero-tolerance, totally safe schools."
Sure.
And compare that to what he's saying now, as the right has driven, well, as his money-making audience has driven rightward. So has he. And what a difference.
Well, but let's take that for Mr. Pierre's first quote is in context to the students. And I don't think anybody in their right mind wants high school students or middle school students or elementary school students bringing guns to school.
Well, now,
you should be punished.
What does gun-free mean to you?
Gun-free means gun-free. But when they're talking about that, what about the police officer that comes onto the campus? Should they have to lock their guns in their car before they come onto the campus, or should they be allowed to carry them?
Well, no, they have signed off on the responsibility for carrying.
Well, but gun-free means gun-free, right? So obviously you can't say gun-free and mean no exceptions.
Well,
is the point I'm driving.
I don't think anyone would invoke. I mean, we have gun-free zones.
So trained security probably would fall in that they've agreed to the exception.
But now we're talking about arming janitors and teachers, though. That's
just not a good idea. You lock a bunch of kids in the room with the teacher, they find out he's got a gun, and then you wonder why the teacher gets just swamped. And I mean, the teacher's never be able to turn the gun on the students.
No, in fact, I believe if you do start arming janitors, and that one in particular is head scratching in teachers. I think where you're going to provide.
Well, we parody janitors to be retarded people, and so.
But I think you're going to end up providing a nice supply of guns to juvenile teens.
I would agree with you. I mean, I think there's so many things in there you'd have to look at as to how you safely get a gun to school without everybody knowing it's there, without it being a trained professional
ask any. This was an off-the-record conversation from long ago, so I think we're good now. Valley High School. And this may be public knowledge now, I don't know, has security cameras. They have hidden cameras in various places where they believe, bad things happen. And the administrator said specifically, we can't let the students know that we have these, or they will tear the school apart to find them. Once it's these teachers are carrying guns, what do you think is going to happen? And I'm sorry, but even our own police are having their guns ripped off, either out of their garage or they're leaving them on their back bumper. That was the latest one, and driving off. Like, what's your gun doing on your bumper? I probably don't want to know.
Yeah, why isn't it? When the gun gets drawn, it gets used and put back in its holster.
These are trained police officers. Now let's start arming teachers across the country.
I'm with you there. I don't necessarily think arming teachers is the right idea.
Anyone who at Valley High School, do you want Mr. Deerduff walking around with an AR-15? Or how about my Spanish teacher?
Well, but they were never talking about giving them, and I'm going to use your language, assault rifles. They were talking about handguns and concealable guns. I mean, nobody's been talking about give them an AR. That's not what they've been.
All right, reinstate and strengthen the assault weapons.
Okay.
Restore the 10-round limit on ammunition magazines. And again, this is a place where Dick Cheney and I are on the same side. And this is, by the way, another one of those majority.
I think it's great because if you need to carry multiple magazines, way easier than the big long ones to conceal.
If it's hunting or self-defense, if you got to fire 30 shots, you shouldn't be shooting in the first place.
Well, but we're not limiting what people can carry for magazines. And see, here's the problem with that is I think those, like the 100-round 9mm clip, that's a worthless piece of equipment. It sticks this far out of your gun. I mean, literally, where are you going to hide that thing?
Well,
it would be a lot more feasible.
That's what happened in Arizona, where his gun jammed.
Yeah, and they're usually low quality because no serious gun manufacturer wants to extend beyond the butt of the pistol. So I mean,
I would take, by the way, a step further than we did previously, which is possession is grandfathered, transfer is not.
Sure.
As in, like, if you've got them, you can keep them, but you can't sell them.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, the thing I don't think I have a problem with is, like, I don't have a problem with for like the AR. I don't have a problem. I don't see why a 13-round mag is any better than a 25-round mag. I mean, chances are, if you have a 25 round mag, you're not doing anything different than you would with 13. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a big enough difference to me.
Getting rid of armor-piercing bullets. Again, not something you need for hunting or self-defense. That is the case, again, where possession should be over the top.
Again, that's details, because what's an armor-piercing bullet? Because there's ones that are already not available to us, and then you have like hollow jackets that may or may not pierce armor, and I mean, you'd have to.
I'll leave that one to military and law enforcement to.
Yeah, there's a lot of details in there that need to be talked about.
Give law enforcement additional tools to prevent and prosecute, especially prosecute gun crime.
I think that's great. Let's enforce the laws we got.
Yeah,
good idea.
And we saw this in New York, where New York State now, you threaten with a gun and you're off the can own guns list.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I do too. I think should be. I mean, short of using a gun, obviously.
Sure.
Even just if you do this. Or, Kansas City has the road rage problem where people are waving guns in their car window.
Yep. No, that's why I quit carrying, is because I had somebody flipping out on me one time, and I thought, how easy would it be to me? And I said, that's the last time I carry my gun. I think that's absolutely legitimate. I think a responsible gun owner would never threaten somebody with their gun. The only thing I would like to make sure we make very clear language that if you're being attacked and you pull it and don't fire it, that's okay. Like if you have a justifiable situation where you could have discharged your firearm and you chose to be patient and wait and not do so, and it worked out for everybody's benefit, yeah, I don't want you to lose your gun. You know what I mean? Because that's actually showing that you're willing to risk your own life.
I think it's kind of who threw the first punch.
Yeah.
Who pulled the first gun?
Yeah, because there's some situations, right now they teach, because of the way gun laws are structured and the way courts usually rule, if you pull your gun, start shooting. And I would like actually the option that if I'm being attacked and I pull my gun, that I wait to see if it's effective. Because sometimes, sometimes the gun is enough. Sometimes it's not. And, while I don't want everybody pulling their guns out.
If I'm at the mall, all right, and worst case scenario happens.
Sure. So you got to shoot active shooter in the mall.
I'm as much scared of that, wannabe Tackleberry guy.
Those guys concern me.
Again, my only source of empowerment is my gun guy, who the same way that when you go buy a $2 Powerball ticket, you fantasize. That's what you're paying for with a lottery ticket. Is you're paying for that 2 days or 2 hours, whatever time till the drawing. Fantasy, what you do. If you win. I think there are too many people out there.
Well, unfortunately, I think you're right there. I don't know what to do with those people.
From, reading what gun people write.
See, the problem is...
They fantasize about being that Dirty Harry, Serpico, John Rambo.
Well, but look at the movies and the media and everything. What else? I mean, of course they fantasize about being like that. What we need to find out... you fantasize about completely other things that aren't appropriate for radio.
Yeah, but I don't fantasize about raining death upon perceived bad guys.
But that's just because your personality isn't that of these guys, and they can't be judged just for the personality. There, I don't. That's discrimination. But see, here's the deal, actually, Bradshaw. Let me get my thought out here. You asked me to chime in. I'm chiming in. The problem with those guys is most of those people are talk, and rooting out the ones that aren't talk is what I would be interested in. How many people after the Aurora shooting were like, "Well, if I'd been there, it ended the thing." And I wrote a blog about that. That said, "Hey, listen here, G.I. Joe. Okay, so you're in a dark, crowded theater. The guy threw smoke bombs. You can't see anything, and you start firing off your gun. What are the chances that you're going to be the one that murders that person's 6-year-old?" That's
fantasy.
I mean, that's, there are now an Army-trained guy that's been in an active battle zone. Maybe he can do it. Maybe he can't. Maybe there was a safe shot. Maybe somebody had a clear shot. But nobody was talking about, well, I would have tried to find a clear shot and then addressed it. They were like, I could have stopped it.
You bring up the military. I mean, they spend months.
Absolutely.
Tearing your personality down. And now part of that is obviously to make you an operational asset or whatever the term we're using these days. But it also takes it takes months to train someone to effectively kill another human being. That's not a normal instinct. So yeah, you know what? If that's the fantasy you have, I would prefer you not respond to the active shooter. I'm as scared of you.
Well, the only thing with that statement, though, and let's tear that apart really quick. The only thing with that statement is they have a right to defend their own life, and in doing so, I don't believe they have a right to endanger yours.
Well, and that's why I don't like the stand your ground laws, because that guy is then legally, if you're not there, if you're at Von Mar and this is happening, at Lemstone Books or whatever, all right, your legal responsibility is get the hell out of there. Now, if you're at Lemstone Books, then your responsibility.
Well, and I think that's common. I like some of the stand your ground stuff. I like
stand your ground means, hey, there's someone shooting over there. I can go over there.
I understand, and I don't like that aspect of that.
And
none of this stuff's perfect.
Lay down my, vengeful wrath.
If you're out of this, if you're in a safe zone, entering an active shooter zone, unnecessarily with no reason, kind of seems like a bad idea. Now, on the same note, what if you're at Sandy Hook, you're armed, you hear the shots, you're across the street, you run across the street, you take out the shooter and save a bunch of kids. That guy's a hero. So there's common sense used here.
When has that happened?
That's actually happened several times. That last mall shooting, the first one before Sandy Hook happened, that we were talking about, a guy entered the active shooter's area, drew his gun, and the active shooter withdrew to a stairway and blew his head off. That has been documented by video surveillance at this point and reported on. That happens. Does it happen all the time? No, because not very many citizens. They would like you to think we all have guns. Like in Iowa, we changed the law and everybody thinks we carry guns. Most carry permit holders don't carry their gun with them very regularly.
Well, and unfortunately, the carry permit issue is a state issue. And not.
I'm glad it's a state issue. I think a lot more of this stuff should be state. I know, but that's different.
I think we need to have minimum standards. I mean, right now, I could go out and get a concealed weapons permit.
Yeah, you'd need a 2-hour class, a $50 fee, and then a month of your life waiting for it to come in the mail.
I've never handled a gun in my life.
That's concerning to me.
I am in no way, shape, or form qualified.
I've been saying this since the get-go. My gun friends want me to shut up about this right now, but I want training.
I can go out and get one, and I am not qualified to fire a gun.
You have to have a driver's license, and you have to show that you're competent.
I'm qualified to get a permit. I am in no way, shape, or form qualified to operate a handgun, especially in an emergency situation. But I can get that permit in Iowa.
That's what bothers me is you have to have a driver's license to actually drive about the streets of Des Moines. I mean, we can argue about the permit stage.
In fact, I can go online through the state of Virginia. I can get a concealed weapons permit and never talk to another human being.
Well, you got to get your fingerprints for Virginia, so you'd have to talk to somebody. But
okay, I can.
It's a little more complicated than you're making it out to be. But you're right.
It's not complicated.
It's incredibly too easy. I agree. Going and taking a course online, taking the piece of paper you printed out from your computer to the sheriff and saying, "Look, I took this course. I'm good now." That's not enough.
And now, Mr. Sheriff, you have to give me my permit thanks to Republican.
It used to be a 2-day class where you demonstrated shooting, and they worked through all the different types of guns that you could possibly carry and showed you how to use them responsibly. They talked to you. They brought in movies of things. They brought up real life scenarios that happened and where they went wrong.
We put more requirements into driving a car.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's just absolutely stupid that I can drive a car, but I have to go through driver's ed and test with the DOT.
Yeah.
But I can get a gun without any kind of testing at all.
Yeah, I have to prove, to get a learner's permit, I have to prove.
And people argue that owning a gun's a right, and I agree with them. Owning the gun is a right. Carrying it about in today's society probably needs a little more attention.
All right, this might be the big one that is going to cause the NRA to freak out as well.
Oh, I think the reinstating the assault weapons ban.
Nah, because we did that, and Republicans in the past, even Ronald Reagan, who personally lobbied for the assault weapons ban. I think.
Yeah, but we've changed from that point.
Oh yeah, the right wing's gone off the deep end. End the freeze on gun violence research, and this is something I've been talking about for a couple.
I think
days
that's a great idea.
Well, the NRA doesn't. The NRA has fought tooth and nail, and Republican lawmakers under their sway have made sure that, for example, the CDC is punished for doing any sort of real gun research. Academic institutions will have their funding threatened.
Sure.
For doing.
Well, and this is part of why I don't belong to the NRA. Is I think it's okay. If we're not afraid of anything, if we have a viable case, then it should be able to be scrutinized.
And people who aren't afraid, who do have a viable case, don't try to enact gag orders.
Yeah, I think it's silly.
Stifle.
I think it's silly.
Well, it all started with one study that said you were 43 times more likely someone in that household will die.
Well, that's common sense.
If there's that gun, then it used to protect someone in a break-in.
I think that's common sense because we
was enough. By the way, that simple study.
Yeah,
wasn't refuted, wasn't argued.
How do you refute that? There's a gun. Gun violence is much more likely where there's a gun. The problem is we don't know where there's not a gun. I mean that's my problem. Isn't whether I'm particularly worried about owning guns or not. It's that I don't know who doesn't own guns. If I could just live in a neighborhood where I could know for a fact and trust every other human being in that neighborhood that we didn't have guns and we put walls and nobody could get into it, I wouldn't want my guns. I wouldn't need them. I wouldn't feel...
No, the problem you run into is, again, the feedback loop.
Sure.
I need guns to protect me from someone with guns who got their guns to protect them from someone with guns.
Well, you do run into that.
It's very effective gun selling, which is what the NRA truly exists to defend. They are far more worried about the opinions of gun manufacturers than...
I think that's a very true statement.
Gun owner members. All right.
How's the dumb gun guy doing? I haven't really made any objections yet, really. She emailed back.
She's off to a meeting.
Oh. She's probably
she says you're too loud.
I'm sorry. Here, I'll turn it down.
All right.
There you go.
Make our schools safer with more school resource officers and school counselors, safer climates, better emergency response plans.
Sounds great.
By the way, that last one's a big one. Most emergency response plans are kind of one size fits all, and were aimed around in California, earthquakes, here, tornadoes. That one of the school shootings might have been in Newtown. They huddled off all the kids to a football field, and there were, complaints or just observations that if I was looking to kill a bunch of kids, that would have been a very handy place to do it while they're all huddled together. So, in the same way we kind of stopped doing the hide under your desk to protect you from, the atom bomb. You and I are both probably too young to remember.
Yeah, we are. But
the duck and cover test. But that used to be, by the way, the end-all, be-all of drills, and now they're kind of inclement weather-based tornado drills, fire drills, and now this is something we're going to have to add, is that emergency response plan for guns. And some schools have them, but in a lot of cases, like Sandy Hook, it kind of, teachers improvised. There was the one that put her kids in the closet and said they were in the library. She paid with her life, but her kids...
Yeah, no, and kudos to her. I mean,
I know. We just considered a week earlier, the right wing considered her a union thug freeloader leech.
The only problem with that is that worked. What happens if one of the kids had made a noise and the shooter would have entered the room? He would have had there'd been no chance.
What else was she going to do?
I think you end up. She made the right choice. Yeah. I think it's great. Kudos to her. These plans. I mean, I don't know what you want to do as a parent with a kid at school or with kids at school. I don't know what I think would be the safest option. I mean, that's going to be a long.
We obviously need to arm the school children.
I think so. I mean, if we just gave them all guns,
give our kids AR-15s.
Yeah, they all had GATs. Why not just give them rocket launchers?
I would just send them with a suicide vest.
There you go. You come in this school and shoot a kid, and we're all going. That's a great idea. Okay, I'm with you there. Maybe we could put some bombs on the way into the parking lot, just in case.
Landmines.
Yeah.
The students will know where to walk, and a gunman wouldn't.
Yeah, we'd have to make
the other
sure.
ones. So we're the mental health ones we've covered. Some of the direct actions. Which is making that mental health information available. Studying gun locks, gun safes, a national safe and responsible gun ownership campaign. Publish a letter from ATF to
That sounds
federally
like a lot of
licensed
spent money.
gun dealers, providing guidance on how to run background checks for private sellers. So we'll try to make the system as smooth as possible, but you have to go.
Well, and it's a good revenue source for the FFL. That was what I was getting at earlier. Is I don't really want the system to be controlled necessarily by the government, but we do have the FFL guys already in play, and why not make it a lucrative deal for them where they can do transfers for $50 or $60 a pop, right there.
Nominate an ATF director because that's one of those positions that Republicans have been stonewalling on, just as a sop to the gun lobby.
Sure. It doesn't really. I mean, it needs a director, probably. I don't know. I don't understand why we would stonewall that.
There are a number of mental health parity issues.
Maybe make that part of the cabinet. Or
incentives for schools to hire school resource officers, and that's an area where if you want to get them, cover the cost. There's even a study. And this, the NRA asked for this and got it because, Obama's such a dictator, looking into links between video games, entertainment, and violence, which I'm all for.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea.
Where I draw the line, I can't remember which state, is talking about adding a surcharge on any game rated teen or higher, which I don't know if you need to necessarily put an excise tax on.
That just seems like adding a tax.
Well, no, what it is that one's unconstitutional. Now, if you add a tax on all video games, and the money would go to mental health research. If you want to tax all video games, you know what, we can talk about that. But if you're only going to choose some games.
Yeah, I don't like that idea, though, because then you're just taxing parents for, something we're selling. Yeah, I don't know. We already have federal
quick,
sales tax.
Because I have a couple of minutes.
Or state sales tax, sorry.
You can read the rest of the details, whitehouse.gov. Nothing set you off. I haven't seen any steam come out of your ears. You haven't threatened to shoot me.
I'm not a big fan of the assault weapons ban part just because I thought it was ineffective the first time.
Well, I think the president agrees, which is why, again, instead of making a Swiss cheese, loophole-filled law, let's do something.
Well, yeah,
with teeth. Let's take gun people at their word. They want to hunt and defend themselves.
Yeah.
If a weapon, falls outside of that range, then it should probably be looked at.
I think we should. I think that we can have that conversation, and if he does an executive order on it, I think the next
no, I mean that one's one that would have to go through Congress. That's not an executive order.
It's one of those things where this is me being reasonable, but the Democrats won this time. And so we got to kind of
really. Can you tell the rest of the right wing?
We got to watch what you guys do, and if we don't like it, then we need to energize our base, find issues that we actually connect on, win the presidency, win the Senate, win the Congress.
It's almost like winning elections allows you to pass your agenda.
It is. It's like, but see that the problem I have with it is when Bush got elected, I remember the media going, "Well, we don't want him to think this is a mandate from the Christian conservatives." Well, it was a mandate from the Christian conservatives, and Bush didn't treat it like it and really ticked a lot of us off and disenfranchised us from the party to begin with.
Oh, I wouldn't go. I think.
Why do you think a large percentage
of you have it the exact? Well, because he failed was the reason.
I don't think he responded to it.
If he had been successful, he would be lionized Reagan style.
Sure.
The reason they deify Reagan is because really he's the only Republican. Since Eisenhower, that's popular. They lionize Reagan because he's the only choice they have. They can't go with Nixon. You're gonna try to deify Barry Goldwater, Gerald Ford, the first President Bush, second President Bush. They go with Reagan because he's the only option they have. Otherwise, you're stuck with I don't know what, Newt Gingrich. But anyway. The response to these, aside from the cries of tyranny and dictator, in Mississippi, a state known for its good taste, Governor Phil Bryant has called for immediate legislation that would make any unconstitutional order on gun policy taken by President Obama illegal to enforce in Mississippi. In other words, nullification. In other words, let's relive the 1850s. Unfortunately, because of Mississippi's horrible education system, they may not know what happened the last time southern states tried to mess with nullification. Ask Atlanta what they think about the North coming down to visit. We need General Sherman, and we need you now. For all the talk of but the Founding Fathers wrote the Second Amendment so that we could stand up against a tyrannical government. Well, what did the Founding Fathers do? For example, are you familiar, Dan, with the Whiskey Rebellion?
What about it?
As where Appalachian folks were using whiskey actually as a currency, something to do with their leftover grain, because hooch is a lot easier to transport than grain.
Sure.
The federal government taxed hooch. And this fine patriotic group decided to hold a little bit of a rebellion. And George Washington himself led the crackdown on these folks. That's how the Founding Fathers actually dealt with.
All right, we got to wrap up. I got to change out a piece of equipment.
Okay, 2 minutes here, just because this is something you're going to hear more of in the next couple of days. And the NRA has decided their over-response is going to be calling out Obama's children. Yesterday, they posted a video on their website accusing the president of being an elitist hypocrite because his daughters have armed guards at school. Now, as anyone who has ever dealt with the Secret Service will tell you, these are very serious people, and they're very serious for a very serious reason. The president receives many threats every single day. So when the NRA asks, are the president's kids more important than yours? Yes, because if your kids are abducted, if your kids are threatened, if your kids are held hostage, the entirety of national security isn't at stake. With the way that the right wing has become unhinged and is getting unhingier, is that a word now? I just hope for the NRA's sake and the nation's sake that someone doesn't take their official propaganda as a call to arms. But just to answer their question, yes, the president's children are more important than ours. You might not like that fact, but it doesn't change it. There's a lot more at stake with his kids, and I'm sure, and I say this as someone, talked earlier, has endured a death threat, which was a lot of fun. Nothing compared to what the president deals with. All right, so we'll have more, I'm sure, on the over-the-top creepy response tomorrow as the right wing gels around exactly what their plan of action is going to be. Best guess looks to be 4-year-old in a checkout line who can't get a candy bar, who really, really wants a candy bar. Because so far all I'm seeing is tantrum. And I guess if they don't want to be part of the discussion, I'm okay with that. It's their choice. I'm not going to exclude them, but it looks like they're going to do everything in their power to exclude themselves. Email me at radiobradshaw@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/radiobradshaw. And I will see you fine folks tomorrow. 1:30, we reconvene here on The Bradshaw Show. TheBradshawShow.com on Webcast One Live. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.